All right, y'all, today here we are sitting on the dinner on the grounds picnic table because we're gonna have a tutorial video and I'm gonna show you how to calibrate a spreader or how to know that you're putting down the right amount of product based on the spreader you're using. Whatever questions you wanna ask, it's how do I know that I've got the spreader setting right? Now you're gonna see I've got a spreader here that's labeled Yard Mastery. This is brand new release, literally just today as I'm filming this. But this is actually a 2600A Plus from Earthway. It is literally the same spreader as a 2600A Plus. The only differences are it's a different color and it's got our logo on it, and it comes to you 90% already assembled. The 2600A Plus you have to assemble yourself. I'll give you a link to a video below that I did that'll show you all about this spreader, how to put it together, all the ins and the outs. But just know as we go forward in this video, it doesn't matter what spreader you're using, whether you're using the Yard Mastery one or an Earthway spreader, or you have an RB60 from Echo or a Scott spreader. The strategy behind this, the way that I approach calibrating the spreader is done the exact same way. So you can use this video to help you no matter what spreader you have. So with that, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna put down some Yard Mastery fertilizer. Now you're gonna see also one thing I've done is formulated these so that all the grains or prill sizes are the same. So we use the same spreader settings for all of our fertilizers, including prodiamine too. We have everything calibrated that way for you. So once you have the spreader setting or the spreader calibrated for one of our ferts, it's going to be good for all. And so today I'm actually due for an application of Flagship because I actually have a lawn here. I'm a homeowner just like you are. And today I'm due in my Yard Mastery app for an application of Flagship. So I figured as I put that down and I calibrate this brand new spreader, brand new to me, I'm going to show you how I do that. And that way, if you want to calibrate a spreader at your house to know that things are going down right, you're good to go. All right, so what most people do, and it works out just fine, they go get their bag of fertilizer, they find their spreader right here on the spreader settings, which is on every bag of fertilizer. And in this case, it's 14. They take the bag, they dump it into the spreader, they set the spreader on 14, open it up, and they go. And usually, 90% of the time, everything is fine. However, there are those cases where people do that and they end up coming up short. They end up only getting maybe halfway done with their area and they're totally out. Or the other thing that can happen is they get 100% done with the area and hardly anything has come out, or somewhere in between. And that's where you got to wonder, well, how do I go back and see what went wrong? And that's really what this video is for. So just so you guys know, the spreader setting for the 2600A Plus, that's the Earthway, and the Yard Mastery spreader, the spreader setting for all the Yard Mastery fertilizers is spreader number 14. So I'm going to set that spreader setting and show you what that does. Now, this is a broadcast spreader. The other type of spreader you'll see is called a drop spreader, and I don't recommend those. I recommend broadcast spreaders. With this one, the way it works is you set your spreader setting like we saw, and what that does is when you actuate it, it opens the drop holes that are down here in the bucket, and it allows the fertilizer or the product to drop through and land on this disc here, this spinning disc, which is called an impeller. And the impeller has fins on it, and that flings the fertilizer out all the way around, and it creates what's called a swath. And that swath looks kind of like a half moon. And the swath is about 3.5 feet to the left and about 3.5 feet to the right. Some spreaders are a little bit lower of a swath and some spreaders are a little bit more, but they're typically gonna be right around that 3.5 feet. So you get that total swath of about 6.5 to 7 feet. All right, now that you know how the spreader works and you have the spreader setting there, now we can go to about verifying it. And there are 3 things we need to know here. The first thing we need to know is the application rate. How many pounds on the ground are we even supposed to be putting down? The second thing we need to know is our walking speed when we're pushing. And then the third thing we need to know is what is our overlap? How are we throwing back each time? So we're gonna go through those 3 things now, starting with the application rate, which is pounds on the ground, which is how much of this fertilizer should go down on my lawn. And it starts with measuring your lawn. So measuring your lawn will tell you how big it is, and also when you measure the lawn, you're gonna segment it out. And so you download the Yard Mastery app, I'll give you a link below, and there's a lawn measuring tool in there. It's using satellites where you can go and outline each section of your lawn, your logical sections, section it out. You'll measure the entirety of your lawn, but it will also break it up into sections like this one that we're gonna do today, which is 2,000 square feet. So that's the next thing I need you to do is, once you measure your lawn, choose a spot that is 2,000 square feet. That's important because we're just gonna do one small area while we test this to make sure that everything is right. So the next step is to measure the lawn and choose a spot that's 2,000 square feet like I've got here. All right, now they always told you you'd never use algebra in school, but here you're gonna use it now and it's gonna be fun. So what we need to understand is how much does this bag cover? And you'll see on every bag of fertilizer, they're gonna have that. Here you see 18-pound bag covers 6,000 square feet. And that's the other thing I want to mention right now is that in lawn care we have a standard, and that standard is 1,000 square feet. Everything we do in lawn care, we talk about it in terms of 1,000 square foot increments. That's fertilizer, insecticides, fungicides. Everything is about coverage of 1,000 square feet. And in the case here, 18-pound bag covers 6,000 square feet. Now I'm doing 2,000 square feet, so just do a little bit of simple math. If 18 pounds covers 6,000 and I have 2,000, then I need 6 pounds. 6 pounds of this product will go in this spreader and should cover my 2,000 square foot section. You see how that math works? That's the application rate. The application rate here is 3 pounds per 1,000. 18 divided by 6 is 3. 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet. That's our app rate. We've got 2,000 square feet, so we need 3 times 2, which is 6. 6 pounds of product. You gotta love the math, but the math will open windows of understanding to you, so when you're done, if you do get results or you don't, you'll know why. You'll know at least that your base math was correct. So take 6 pounds of this product and put it in that spreader. Now, before you go clicking off because of all that math, I'm gonna give you full written instructions down below in the description, because some of you are better learners that way, so I'll have all of this fully written out, typed out for you with pictures and all that. I'll give you a blog post to that link below. The next thing is, how are we gonna get the 6 pounds out of here? Well, this is where you're gonna have to make a small investment. This is an important one because you're gonna use this over and over in your lawn care journey. You wanna get a luggage scale. I'll give you a link to one below, but just any old luggage scale on Amazon is fine. And then you need just a small bucket like I've got here. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on my luggage scale here, and I'm gonna do what's called tearing off the weight of the bucket, because the bucket has a 0.8. It weighs about a 3/4 pound, so we're just gonna get rid of that so it doesn't affect our measurement. And then I'm gonna go ahead and open up my bag of fertilizer here. What you wanna do when you open a bag of fertilizer for safety is you wanna cut towards your camera person. You cut towards him. That way it's safe for you, okay? Anyway, we're gonna pour 6 pounds into here. Now, do I know what 6 pounds is? No, I'm not a pro. I mean, I've done this a few times. Now, I'm just gonna guess at first. So we throw that in there, take our little scale here, pick it up. There we go. We are at 5.3. Can you see that? So we're at 5.3, 5.4, so we need a little bit more. Tippy tip, sippy sip. By the way, this is a fun thing to do with your kids too, because you're using math here, you're moving stuff around. You know, kids like this kind of stuff. Teach them, you know, while you're learning. There we go, 5.96. That's close enough for jazz. Here, let's do it. Let's get it right here. Oh wait, what's the salt? I gotta do the Salt Bay thing. Right? Oh, that's terrible, all over my driveway. See, I like to have a little fun too. Oh, 5.99. I think I'm gonna cut it loose there. It's like playing blackjack. You gotta know when to fold them. So there we go. 5.9. So now what I've got in this bucket is 6 pounds of product. This 6 pounds of fertilizer evenly spread across that 2,000 square feet using this broadcast spreader. So the first thing I want to do is just open everything up. There you go. I'm just going to put a few grains down in here because I want you to start visualizing how this is going to work. How are these grains sized versus those holes? You can start doing some things logically. For example, if these were not hardly open at all and it didn't even look like these could get through, that would be a clue to you that something's off already. Or if they were wide open all the way and it looked like they would flow through in a heartbeat, another problem. But this looks pretty logical based on grain size and opening. All right, now I'm ready to dump my fert. And this spreader is equipped with what's called side spread control, or what most people call an edge guard, and most spreaders nowadays are. And basically what the edge guard does, or the side spread control does, is it shuts off the application so where it only sprays through half. And what that allows you to do is go right down an edge, nice and tight, without throwing stuff into the street, and do your first application right down the edge. So I'm gonna actuate my side spread control here, and now I'm ready to go. I got my spreader setting on 14. I'm gonna start on my edge, and I'm gonna start rolling now. All right, now the first thing I want you to notice on that was my walk speed. It's what I call a double fast walk. It's a walk with purpose, or what I've always termed as putting some ass into it. So you're not leisure here, you're actually up and moving. And that's gonna be your walk speed all the way through, that double fast walk. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my edge guard off. And now what that does is it opens up the flow so that now I'm got a full swath. Remember, 3.5 feet that way, 3.5 feet that way. And so now we're gonna do what's called the overlap. Now I know this might get confusing because we keep filming from both ends, but this is the same area we've been dealing with. And I just made my pass coming from down there and going through that edge. And as I'm coming back now this way, my goal is to throw back to the wheel tracks of the previous pass. Remember, I've got 3.5 feet that way and 3.5 feet that way. So I want to be 3.5 feet over. Now, where are my wheel tracks? Well, they're right here on the edge, because remember, I was right along that edge, and I can actually see it there. You can't see it on camera, but I can see it. So I'm just visualizing 3.5 feet over, and I'm going to be throwing back to that. As I keep my walk speed going down this way, double fast walk, throwing back to the wheel tracks of my previous pass. Let's do it. Okay, so I did that pass coming down. I'll throw them back to my wheel tracks. I've now moved 3.5 feet over this way, and I'm gonna make my next pass, throwing back to the wheel tracks of the last one. And that's basically it. Up and back, double fast walk, throw them back to the wheel tracks of the previous pass. And when you get to the end of your section, you should be pretty much empty, and that's how you know if your spreader setting was right. So let's go ahead and go for it. All right, so now I'm halfway done, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a visual look at my fertilizer here. Does it look like it's halfway down? That's why I talked about visuals. And as I'm looking at it, it does. It's about halfway down from where it was, and I'm halfway down my application. So that tells me that I'm doing pretty good so far. If something was off, I would know, hey, maybe I need to adjust my walk speed or my overlap's not right, but I happen to be good. So we're gonna continue on. We got a couple more passes and we'll be good to go. All right, so here you can see I got just a little bit left, and you guys know what we do with that. We do what's called the circle dance, because you guys all do this. You're always gonna have a little speck left, which, by the way, tells me my setting was right. What do you do with that little speck? You take that bad dog out there, you open it up, and you circle dance. All right, first thing before I give you a wrap up here, make sure you go back and blow off your driveways and sidewalks. We don't want any staining. We want everything to get back into the lawn. Now, let's talk about some wrap ups here, some final thoughts. Let's say that you're somebody that you did that test and you ran out way too early. Well, then what you're gonna wanna do with your spreader is back off the setting a little bit. Instead of a 14, maybe you wanna go with a 13 or a 12. If you're the other way around and you had a lot left over, then you wanna open yours up. Maybe you wanna go to a 15 or a 16 and then go out and test again. You really are only gonna have to do this once, maybe twice, and you'll have it all dialed in. And as far as how often should you recalibrate your spreader, just once a year at the beginning of the year, because you never know when things are going to come loose or get banged up. I'm actually going to make some further videos on how to calibrate the spreader from the jump. It does come 90% already assembled, but there are some small things you can do to calibrate it and make sure that stuff's in line. So I'll give you a link in the description below to that, as well as a full blog post in writing of how all of this works. So last thing, people will ask, well, what if I don't have one of the spreaders that you have listed on your bag there? How do I do this? You can use this exact same strategy here, but what you do is, instead of going with a setting, is you start with your spreader 1/3 open. So whatever that is, if your spreader has 30 settings, then you start at 10. If your spreader has 3 settings, then you start at 1. Start at 1/3 open. Start there as your starting point, go out and do the same test I did, and then open or close from there. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. I hope it helps you to be a better applicator and to get better results from the Yard Mastery fertilizers. I'm Alan Hain, the Lawn Care, and I'd like to thank you for supporting an American small business, and I'll see you in the lawn.